Hi, it's Liz from West Star Tarot, and I am continuing my responses to Mascha at Musings by Mascha, the Top Tarot Trump series. We're moving along. We started in January and now it's September, so this is really going to be just about a year-long project. And as I've mentioned multiple times, I'm really thoroughly enjoying this process and this project. It's been a lot of fun. It's been enlightening. It's been thought-provoking. Anyway, I'm really enjoying it. And once again, I thank you, Mascha, for the inspiration you've given us all. So the Tower, Trump 16. Yeah, what can we say about this card? So when you look at that Rider-Waite-Smith image, I've actually not pulled a Rider-Waite-Smith image, but I do have a Mascha image. This is from the Gay Mascha by Charlie Claire Burgess. And of course, in the Mascha deck, this is known as La Maison Dieu, or House of God. And here we see the structure, the tower structure, being struck by, well, in this case, it's not lightning, it's more like flames. And this card is a little bit different. We do have the folks falling out, but we have something else interesting going on here. And I just want to read from the guidebook what Charlie has to say about this, because they have presented this card in a little bit of a different way. So the House of God, so they are using this card to represent, or I guess I should say they're using the Stonewall riots in New York City in 1969 to represent a tower moment. And so what Charlie says is that the tower is associated with upheaval, chaos, and crisis. But in Mascha decks, the card is more suggestive of breakthroughs, epiphanies, and liberation. So if we look at this card, we can see in one way that the House of God indicates human-made structures and paradigms, rocked by cataclysmic events or revelations. But they say, seen in another way, the card represents liberation from imprisonment and repression. And that's how Charlie is looking at this. So they go on to just mention the Stonewall riots, which you may or may not know was a spontaneous uprising in New York City where the queer community came together to resist police and protest for LGBT rights. So this card reflects this turning point in the fight for queer liberation. So we mentioned the cop and the judge were being tossed out of the tower, but here we can see remaining in the tower are Marsha P. Johnson and Stormy de la Verney, and they were two prominent figures in the Stonewall riots. And so here we see the House of God has been taken over by queers, and the cop and judges kicked to the curb. This card is a reminder that some power structures need to fall, and that meaningful positive change often comes through crisis. And so I think that's gets to the crux of the matter of the Tower card. Oftentimes we're resisting change. It's like we're afraid, we're resisting, and the longer we resist the change, the more things build up till we get to a point where rather than making gradual change, things just crumble. Everything just falls to the ground. Because we have either ignored the crisis, or the compending crisis, we've repressed the need for change, we've put it aside until it gets to a breaking point, and then the structure, the foundation falls apart, and everything tumbles to the ground. So that is starting off with the Gay Marseille. I wanted to move on now to this one. This is from the Tarot de Sainte Croix by Lisa de Sainte Croix, and I love this one. It's a little bit different. I mean, we've got the tower, we've got the lightning, we've got the figures, but as you can see in this card, the figure isn't falling, it's riding on the back of a crow. So let me just say that Lisa says this card represents old structures fall down, bringing release from things that no longer work. So, you know, we think about this card in terms of the collapse and calamity and crisis and chaos. But I really like how Lisa frames the idea of it also represents release. So release from oppression, release from what isn't working for us, release from what no longer serves us. And I really like that idea behind the tower. Because as we often say as tarot readers, no card is all bad or all good. Let me now move on to another one of my favorites. This is from the Gaian Tarot. And this, we don't see a man-made structure in this one. We see nature, lightning striking a tree, and you can see the figures falling. And here's what Joanna Powell-Colbert, Joanna, has to say about this card. The Tower, she has renamed it Lightning, but she also refers to it as the Tower. Lightning strikes a tree and lights it on fire as a thunderstorm rages. 3 figures fall out of the sky as if in a dream. When lightning strikes, there is an increase of ozone in the atmosphere, which cleanses the air. The nitrogen is released into the earth when lightning hits the ground, causing sand and soil to flourish with greenery. In the same way, the aftermath of a calamity can bring about renewal in our lives. So, similar to what Lisa was saying about release, Joanna's saying, you know, the structure cleanses, the falling of the structure cleanses and allows for new growth. So instead of being stuck in this old structure that isn't serving us, now the structure has fallen, perhaps violently, suddenly, difficultly, calamitously. I don't think I said that right, but I hope you get my point. What has happened is everything has been cleansed. The old has been wiped out, and now things have cleansed, and there's room for new growth and change and opportunity for progression and evolution and growth. All right, I wanted to pull out this one. This is from the Urban Tarot by Robin Scott. And let me just read you what Robin has written about this deck in case you are not familiar with it. Robin is a born and raised New Yorker, and this deck is kind of an ode to New York City. So what Robin says is, this deck is a love letter to my city, my island, and my first muse, New York. And I read that because what Robin has to say about this card, you need to know how they feel about their background regarding New York and why they represented this card the way they did. So it's called the Towers, plural, and I'm sure you can see what it's representing. A friend of mine really hates this card because they feel like it's such a narrow representation that it precludes room for anything else. I disagree with that, but I understand why they feel that way. But here's what Robin has to say, and I think this really touches me. I am not a New Yorker. I am from Boston, but, you know, a couple hundred miles down the road, and I have a lot of friends and family who are from New York City. And I love that city. It's an incredible place. So this is what Robin has to say. this is not the card I wanted to make. I would have loved to be able to make a card that was more fantasy, where I got to interpret the meanings of the old tarot images through the lens of my city. I did not have that option. If you are familiar with the tarot, you know that the 16th trump is generally called the Tower. It is one of the most universally negative cards in the set. It features a tower of flame struck from the heavens, collapsing. There are often figures shown falling from it. There was simply no way I could do the 16th trump and have it be anything other than this. I'll be honest, I tried. I tried to get around it, but anything else I could possibly have done would be a kind of mockery of this, a cowardly obfuscation, so I wouldn't need to put this image on my screen. I think I knew deep down that this card would always have to be this, and I hate it. I hate looking at it. It's ugly in every sense of the word, like an open wound. Looking through the photos and video I used as reference as I created this image made me sick to my stomach with grief. This happened in my city. This happened. I don't know what it was like for people who didn't live here, but for those of us who were here, even those of us who were lucky enough not to really be touched personally by the attack, the memory feels like a scar that won't ever quite heal. This card does not, cannot, will never mean what the 16th trump has meant in other sets. It means this. It is this. The tragic day. This horror, always forever unforgettable. It is so much larger to me than its history. It casts a shadow over every old story that came before. I really would have loved not to have made this card. So I had to include this because, boy, calling it one of my favorite tower cards, it doesn't seem quite accurate, but it's definitely one of the most memorable, one of the most impactful, one of the most meaningful tower cards. I think of that card a lot when I think of the tower card. And as I said, I'm not a New Yorker myself, but that day hit me personally. I knew people who were near that site and running away from that site. Thankfully, they were able to run away from that site. Unfortunately, not everyone could. So I'm really in that place of remembering that day right now so much. It was an incredibly beautiful early September day. The sky was this incredible blue, and I just remember watching the events unfold on TV, and at one point going for a walk along the beach because I just needed to cleanse and get away from the images that we all are familiar with. And now, over 20 years later, I can still really clearly feel the feelings from that day. And so it's a real life episode that happened that really clearly represents a tarot card that is hundreds of years old. But, you know, when you think about the imagery from this card, where's the game? I say the folks falling. I mean, we saw that happening on that day. So, anyway, that's a tough one that Robin spoke about. And I'm sorry, I have a couple more to follow it up with. Oh boy, the Devil in the Tower were not the most happy of cards, are they? So here's from New Era Elements by L.A. Piper. And again, we have two real life events happening here that actually, this card I just think is so good, because the 9/11 imagery in the back, but in the front is the Berlin Wall. So this is showing two sides to the tower. So let me just say, here's what Ellie has to say. Revolution, annihilation of the old. War, a prison is broken open. Our safety structures are destroyed. Once you've been through a true tower experience, life will never be the same. Here we see there are two dimensions to the tower. While for some, the destruction of the tower is a terrible event, for others, it might mean a prison suddenly broken open. This card depicts two scenarios. In the foreground, we see a crowd scene during the breaking down of the Berlin Wall. There was an immense sense of accomplishment when people successfully rebelled against oppression. In the background, we see the horrible fall of the tower from 9/11. After what happened, the world has not been the same. Between both scenarios, we've learned what it is like to live empowered and what it is like to live in fear. So that card really, really hits me. I love how Ellie took both sides, or two sides of the coin, and showed events that many of us, I was alive for both of those events, and you know how they are two different sides of a coin. So next up is this from Next World Tarot by Christy C. Rhodes. This is the big shiny version. And Christy calls this card Revolution. Take a look at this. Her Devil card and Revolution or Tower card, to me, are two of the most powerful cards in their deck, and two of the most powerful representations of the Devil card and of the Tower card, or as she calls it, Revolution. Defend the sacred. No blood for oil. Let me tell you what Christy has to say. Humanity and nature have long suffered for the occupation of fossil fuel economy. Whether we compromise our beliefs to survive in a capitalist system or lose our power because we are under siege by that same system, we choose to stay in our home. During revolution, we hold on to our definitions of home while we destroy the foundation that no longer supports us. While we can't overthrow, listen, while we can't overthrow entire systems in one setting, we can rebuild our own lives. And so one of the things that I take from this card, in particular, Christie's version of it, is the importance of community. So while we're being so suppressed, oppressed, repressed, and ruled over by the 1%, the patriarchy, the capitalist, white supremacist, whatever you want to call it, we can kind of go like around them, around that system, and form communities, and reach out to communities that may not be our direct community, but who we feel a connection to and a sense of camaraderie with. And so this Revolution card, I also see as working in camaraderie with those of us who also are experiencing the same kind of repression, oppression, suppression, and power over. And we can come together and work together in power with. And I love how Christy says, while we can't overthrow the entire system in one sitting, we can rebuild our own lives. And again, with this sense of community. So revolution is the manifestation of your truth, the destruction of a foundation. Revolution is the loss of a comforting vice, but the birth of a healed soul. So, in order to become healed, to come to a place of liberation and freedom and release, we need to allow for the destruction of the old ways that are repressing us and stifling us and keeping us down on our knees, and to come together and work in community together, so that the revolution can be successful, one step at a time. So those are my Tower cards. And you know, the next card I'm going to be doing is the Star card. So I promise you, I will have happier moments to talk about in the next video. So tell me, comment, let me know, what are your thoughts about these cards? And what are your thoughts about the Tower card in general? What are some of your favorite Tower cards? How do you see the Tower card? So, as always, my friends, I hope that we in our tarot community online continue to come together and build community, listening to each other, working with each other, and helping each other heal. Peace and love.